Today, you can tell one lie. Any lie you want. That was the homework assignment I gave my entire class. But one student just wrote, "I'm still alive." I figured it was just some smart aleck kid trying to be funny, so I tossed it aside without a second thought. It wasn't until a week later, when a student from my class mysteriously disappeared and his roommates found the words "I'm still alive" carved all over the bottom of his bed frame, that I suddenly remembered that piece of paper. I went back and dug through that day's homework. The words on the slip of paper had turned a dark, crimson red, as if they'd been written in blood. I'm a college professor. I have a reputation for teaching some pretty weird stuff, so the students call me Professor Quirk. I always dreamed of being a cop, but my health wasn't up to it, so it's just a fantasy I can't live out. To scratch the itch, I spend my free time studying old case files. Over time, the students started calling me the resident Sherlock. In a way, it was like my dream came true after all. That day was a Monday, the first class of the semester for this particular group. Nobody wants to listen to a balding professor drone on about some incomprehensible PowerPoint slides. The main reason they sign up for my class is my bizarre homework assignments. It's become something of a campus legend. Students actually get excited about doing homework for an elective. Alright, class, today's assignment is this: you can tell one lie. Any lie at all. You don't need to sign your name, just turn it in, I said, trying to build a little suspense. I'll be reading them, but I promise, I'll be the only one who ever sees them. I held up my hand and swore, Scout's honor. My dead serious expression made the whole class burst out laughing. Hey, a professor's got to have a little bit of a sense of humor. After collecting all the little slips of paper, I counted them, tucked them into my book, and headed back to my office. I have to admit, their imaginations are wilder than mine. One person wrote, "I'm actually an alien who got stranded on Earth. I can't get back home, so I have to pretend to be a student. Professor, you're the only person who knows my secret. You have to keep your promise." Another wrote, "I don't love my girlfriend. I don't know her hobbies, I don't know she loves Strawberry Bear, I don't know she hates cilantro, and I don't know when her period is. I don't care about her at all." And then there was one slip, sandwiched between two others. It just said, "I'm still alive." I frowned. Another smart aleck. They're always like that, tossing around life and death like it's a joke. Sigh. For those of us in the throes of a midlife crisis, these things are incredibly serious. I made a mental note to talk to the class about cherishing life next time. They'd probably just roll their eyes at me for being preachy again. I never got the chance. Before the next class, I was notified by the police to come in and assist with an investigation. My class was cancelled. "Professor Chen, do you know a student in your class by the name of Alex?" The detective in front of me asked, his face stern and humorless. "I know the name," I answered honestly. "It's a new class, so I really only know their names. I haven't gotten to know the students personally yet." His eyes flickered. "Professor Chen, Alex went missing last Tuesday. No one has seen him since." Missing? How could he be? Where would he go besides campus? I was getting agitated. One of my students was missing, and I was hearing about it from the police. That was a serious failure on my part as an educator. "Professor Chen, please calm down. According to his roommates, their entire dorm suite took your class." After class that day, Alex was discussing the homework with them and seemed perfectly normal. But the next day, Tuesday, he left during his lunch break, telling his roommates you had asked to see him. He never came back. That's when his roommates called the police. He paused, his cold eyes boring into me, as if trying to find a crack in my composure. "Professor Chen, could you please tell me what you were doing on Tuesday, and why you would have contacted Alex?" "I was in my office all day Tuesday. I didn't go anywhere. And I don't have the student's contact information, so how could I have contacted him individually? You can check my phone. I was starting to lose my cool. Anyone would be terrified if they were being treated like a suspect. He gestured to the officer beside him, who came forward, took my phone, and left the room. Now, it was just the two of us. Professor Chen, you're very popular with your students. They really look up to you, he said with a small smile, breaking the tension. They're just good kids who respect their elders. I'm just a name on a roster, I said. Don't be so modest, Professor. You must be a great teacher. Man, my own kid hates going to school. It worries me sick every day. Look, he took off his hat and pointed to a thinning patch of hair. I'm going gray over it. How do you do it, Professor? I could use some tips to manage my own kid. Kids will be kids, I said. Just guide them, spend more time with them. They'll grow up and understand. I wiped a bead of sweat from my forehead. Even though he was smiling and making small talk, the pressure was immense. Soon, the younger officer returned and whispered something in his ear. He nodded slightly, then had me sign a form and let me go. Thank you for your time, Professor Chen. I'm Detective Miller. We may need your help again if anything comes up. If there's anything I can do, I'll cooperate fully. Please, let me know if there's any news about Alex. After the pleasantries, I rushed back to campus, just in time for my second class. When I walked into the classroom, the usual chaotic buzz died down instantly, replaced by a wave of hushed whispers. It was clear the news about Alex's disappearance had hit them hard. I sighed and tapped on the blackboard to get their attention. I want to assure all of you that I will cooperate with the police to find Alex as soon as possible, I announced. Please don't believe any unsubstantiated rumors. Most importantly, be mindful of your own safety. If you don't have to leave campus, please don't. The moment the bell rang, another professor rushed up to the lectern and pulled me out of the classroom. Chen, Professor Peterson is looking for you. He's furious, throwing things around his office. Be careful when you go in. I'll cover your next class. He gave me a little shove. Go on, hurry. If you're late, he'll find something else to chew you out for. Professor Peterson was my mentor. I still work under him now. I ran to his office, smoothed down my messy hair, straightened my clothes, and took a deep breath before pushing the door open. He was standing by the window, a half-smoked cigarette dangling from his lips. His voice was flat. You're here. Professor, you were looking for me. He took a long drag from his cigarette, then spun around and yelled at me. Didn't I tell you to keep a close eye on Alex? Where is he? He's been gone for a week and I have to hear about it from another professor? What the hell have you been doing? Professor Peterson has a terrible temper. He's always flying off the handle. Over the years, I've learned the best strategy is to just stay quiet and let him vent until he runs out of steam. After enduring nearly 20 minutes of his rage, he finally calmed down. I breathed a sigh of relief. All right. Go to Alex's dorm and see if he left anything behind. That little punk probably just ran off somewhere to have fun. Now the police are involved. When he gets back, you get a plaque made for the police station and take him down there to apologize. Oh, and how's that paper I had you write coming along? Get it submitted. And just like last time, give Alex second author credit. You can take third. Years of being worn down by my stalled career had eroded any fight I had left in me. I just nodded and agreed. The next day, I got in touch with Alex's roommate, Leo, and we went to the dorm together. As soon as we walked in, he slapped his forehead. Damn it, Professor, I forgot I was supposed to pick up food for someone. Why don't you just go ahead and look around? There's no one else here. I can wait for you to get back. It's fine, Professor. We trust you. Seeing that I was insistent, he glanced at his phone. Don't worry, Professor. My buddy is already downstairs. He'll be right up." With that, he rushed out of the room, leaving me alone. I stood there for a moment, stunned, then shook my head and started looking through Alex's things, checking to see if he'd left anything behind. As I was searching, a slip of paper fluttered to the floor. Just as I reached down to pick it up, another hand shot into my vision. "Professor, you dropped this." It was the other roommate, the one Leo said was on his way up. He glanced at the paper and said with a hint of disgust, "Oh, that's Alex's." I took it from him. It read, "I'm still alive." The handwriting was identical to the note from my class. For some reason, looking at those words sent a shiver down my spine. "Alex is always messing with this kind of weird crap," the roommate said. He was probably just bored again. I felt like his expression was a little strange when he mentioned Alex, but maybe I was just imagining things. I gave him a weak smile. "He's still young. He'll grow out of it in a few years." "Young? He's a grown man." "Hey, Professor, you should check under his bed." He pointed under the bed, a strange smile on his face. My heart started to pound. I finally bent down and peered underneath. The sight that greeted me was horrifying. The underside of the wooden bed frame was covered in writing. The dense, overlapping letters looked like a swarm of grotesque insects, making my skin crawl. Fighting back my revulsion, I carefully tried to make out the words. It was, "I'm still alive." An icy chill crept up from the soles of my feet. Just then, my phone rang. Who was it? I crawled out from under the bed and pulled out my phone. "Professor Chen, did you see what I wrote? Tell me, am I still alive? Say something, say something." A chattering sound came from the other end, like teeth clattering together. "I'm still alive, I'm still alive." It was Alex's voice, repeating the same phrase over and over. The sheer despair in his tone was palpable even through the phone. By the time I came to my senses and tried to speak, the line went dead. The dial tone echoed loudly in the quiet room. My hands started to tremble uncontrollably. My ears felt like they were stuffed with cotton. I couldn't hear a thing. I was back in that moment again. My wife, gasping for breath next to my ear, her voice a hoarse whisper, "The baby's alive, the baby's still alive, save," then, the same dead dial tone. My heart hammered against my ribs. I clenched my fists, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. I don't know how much time passed before I felt someone shaking me, a voice calling my name slowly coming into focus. I waved my hand, signaling to the roommate, Leo, that I was okay. Then I immediately grabbed my phone and called Detective Miller. "You're saying Alex just called you?" Detective Miller's voice rose, laced with confusion. "Yes, Detective. I think he might be in danger." "Professor Chen, are you sure it was Alex?" "I'm sure. It was him." But Detective Miller's next words made me freeze on the spot, my feet feeling like they were nailed to the floor. "Professor Chen, we found Alex an hour ago. When we found him, he was already dead. I was back at the police station. But this time, I was being held for 24 hours as a suspect. Alex had been staying in an apartment he rented off campus. This morning, a neighbor smelled a pungent odor in the hallway. They knocked on his door repeatedly, but there was no answer. The neighbor called us, and when we arrived on the scene, we found Alex deceased. Cause of death was carbon monoxide poisoning. Detective Miller recited the facts of the case, his face a blank mask. I didn't say anything for a long time. I couldn't believe it. A living, breathing person was just gone. "Professor Chen, the security camera at the entrance to his apartment complex caught your face last night. What were you doing there?" I looked at him, then quickly looked away, staring at my own hands. "I was dropping another professor home," I said. "He covered a class for me yesterday, so I took him out to dinner to thank him." He had too much to drink, and I was worried about him, so I drove him home. Where did you drop him off? At the gate of the complex. I left him with the security guard and then I left. Why didn't you take him up to his apartment? We're all adults. We have our privacy. I didn't feel it was my place to take him all the way to his door. He gave me a complicated look but didn't press the issue. Instead, he brought up someone else. Leo, the student who came with you to the dorm, went to see Alex last night. That's impossible, I retorted automatically. They were the ones who reported him missing. How would he have known where Alex was? He won't say anything. He's clammed up about why he went to see Alex. Have you told him that Alex is dead? I asked anxiously. No. Why? Can you please hold off on telling him? He's still just a kid. Hearing that his classmate died so suddenly, it could cause serious psychological trauma. He agreed. I finally let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Leo and Alex didn't get along, but he had no motive to kill him. He shouldn't be dragged into this. Suddenly, I remembered the note from my class and the words carved under Alex's bed. I shouted to Detective Miller, who was about to leave the room. Was his apartment covered in the words, "I'm still alive"? He spun around. How did you know? He blurted out. I suspect Alex's death was a suicide. Alex had some mental health issues. He showed signs of bipolar disorder. He was constantly seeking validation from others to prove his own existence. Like the assignment he turned into me, and the words carved under his bed, those were all cries for help. I steadied my nerves and explained my theory to Detective Miller. The bed frame? What was written on the bed frame? I'm still alive. And that homework slip also said, I'm still alive. He froze for a second, then calmly walked out of the room. I assumed he was taking people to go check. And I had to stay here. I hoped he could find the truth and get me out of here soon. I don't know how much time passed, an hour, maybe 2, before he came back. We found the note in your homework pile. Take a look. I shook my head to clear it and looked at what he was holding. Strangely, the words on the paper had changed. The big, bold letters spelling "I'm still alive" seemed to leap off the page, a gruesome, bloody red that was utterly terrifying. It's changed, I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. The words have changed. Detective Miller didn't seem to hear me. He put the paper away and said with a smile, Professor Chen, we've spoken with the professor you had dinner with last night. It was a misunderstanding on our part. You're free to go. I managed a pained smile and went home. But how could the writing on the paper have changed? What if it's different from what was at Alex's apartment? As I was walking out of the police station, someone called my name. My heart leaped into my throat. Professor Chen, that other kid in there is one of your students too, right? Could you help us out and try to talk to him? It was the young officer who was always with Detective Miller. I suppressed my own doubts and agreed. I don't know anything. Alex told me to go to his place. That's all I know. What did you do at his apartment? Nothing. I could hear their conversation as I approached the interrogation room. Leo had a bad temper, especially when it came to anything involving Alex. The young officer gave me an embarrassed smile and handed me a notepad with a list of questions. Professor, I'm really sorry to trouble you with this. They both left, leaving just me and Leo. But how many people were watching from behind the two-way mirror? You and Alex didn't get along. Why? I asked, reading the questions from the notepad robotically. What do you think? I just couldn't stand him. Why were you at Alex's apartment last night? He told me to come, so I went. He was being completely uncooperative, offering no useful information. This was going to make him look very suspicious. I stopped following the script and asked him something completely unrelated. Did you also take my class? Yeah. Our whole suite signed up for your class, Professor. Why did you choose my class? Because, he paused, it's interesting. The cases you talk about in class are fascinating. After that, he lowered his head, a clear sign he was done talking. I looked at him, my mind racing. Just then, without making a sound, he mouthed something to me. I suddenly realized the security camera was at an angle where only I could see his face clearly. Before I could even process what he had said, Detective Miller came back in, interrupting my thoughts. Things felt like they were spiraling out of control. I felt the slip of paper in my pocket, the one that had fallen from Alex's bed. It looked just like the one Detective Miller had shown me later. Except this one was a more vibrant, brilliant red. I should have turned it in. Now, it was a ticking time bomb in my pocket. I rubbed my fingers together nervously, trying to figure out my next move. Leo was definitely hiding something. I didn't know what his beef with Alex was, and what had he mouthed to me at the end. I was sitting in the back of a car, lost in thought, when Detective Miller, sitting in the passenger seat, suddenly spoke. Is something wrong, Professor Chen? My mind snapped back to the present. I'd forgotten he was in the car. I looked up and saw him watching me in the rearview mirror. One of my students passed away. It's just a lot to take in, I said, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. You're a very responsible professor, Chen. Your students are lucky. Most people would be trying to distance themselves as much as possible. He turned his head away and closed his eyes, saying no more. I had intended to go back to the university by myself, but he had insisted on giving me a ride. What were they going to the university for? To look for evidence? Or to see Professor Peterson? Right, he was in the lab today. Phone off, no interruptions. It made sense the police would go find him in person if they couldn't reach him. Even though I reasoned it out, something still felt off. Did he know something? The seed of doubt began to sprout in my mind. I needed to be careful. Very, very careful. I took a deep breath and put my mask back on. Alex was already dead. He was next. After getting out of the car, I led Detective Miller and his young partner, Officer Evans, to my office and got them each a cup of water. Please wait here for a moment. Professor Peterson is running an experiment today. I'll go get him now. Thanks, Professor. We're in no hurry, Officer Evans said, quickly taking the paper cup and thanking me. I left the office, carefully closing the door behind me. It still made a noise. I accidentally locked the door. With the door shut, I walked slowly toward the laboratory. On the way, I was stopped by a frantic-looking student. Professor Chen. Professor Chen, something terrible happened. The lab exploded. My expression changed. Don't panic. Calm down and tell me what happened. Who was in the lab? Was anyone hurt? She looked like she was about to cry. Only Professor Peterson was in there. We don't have a key, we can't get in. What do we do, Professor? Okay, you stay calm. Were you the only one outside the lab when it happened? Yes, just me. You call 911, then go notify the other faculty. I'll go to the lab and see what's going on. She nodded in a panic. I turned, a look of urgency on my face, and ran toward the lab building. Once I was at the base of the building, out of her line of sight, I slowed my pace back down, ran a hand through my hair, and continued on my way at a leisurely stroll. I stood outside the lab door and called in. Professor Peterson. Are you conscious? After several tries with no answer, I turned on the lab's ventilation system, then confidently pushed the door open and walked inside. The explosion had occurred near the window. Professor Peterson was lying face down in the middle of the blast zone. I walked closer to get a better look at his condition. His face was badly burned, his hands were a mangled mess of flesh and blood, and his breathing was faint. He looked to be in very bad shape. Just as I was about to turn him over, I heard a rush of hurried footsteps outside the door. I hadn't expected them to get here so quickly. I had to abandon the idea. I stood up and waited for the paramedics to arrive. To my surprise, it wasn't just the medics who showed up. The two detectives were with them. I stepped aside and watched as they administered first aid to Professor Peterson. Detective Miller, however, only glanced at the man on the floor before his eyes locked onto me. I knew it. He was starting to suspect me. Or rather, the suspicion on me had never really been cleared. But what did it matter? After Professor Peterson was taken to the hospital, Detective Miller no longer bothered to hide his suspicions. He just stared at me. He took out a pair of handcuffs and led me to the police station. I was back at the station again. This was the third time. Unlike the first two, this time I was personally escorted by Detective Miller. The interrogation room was different, too, smaller, quieter. The detectives were the same, though, Miller and his partner, Officer Evans. After a long silence, Detective Miller began the questioning. "Why did you lock us in your office?" "The handle on my office door is broken. You have to lock it for the door to stay shut. Besides, the key is in the lock. It wouldn't have delayed you, would it? If I had done it on purpose, wouldn't that just make me look even more guilty?" He was silent for a while, seeming to weigh the truthfulness of my words, to decide whether to believe my clumsy-sounding excuse. I wasn't lying. My door really was broken. Even if they investigated, they'd find the same thing. "Were you responsible for the explosion in Peterson's lab?" His partner, Evans, didn't hold back. He just blurted out the question, his face contorted with anger, as if he was ready to punch me if I denied it. "The explosion in the lab? How could I have possibly done that? When lab personnel don't follow safety protocols, explosions can happen. That's not something we can control. If I could control when an experiment explodes, I wouldn't be sitting here," I answered calmly. As soon as I finished speaking, the usually calm Detective Miller's expression changed. "We just got a call from the hospital. Peterson's eyes were damaged in the blast. He's temporarily blind. The bones in his fingers were shattered. They won't recover to their previous state. Which means, he may never be able to conduct an experiment again." For the first time, there was a tremor in Detective Miller's voice. "It's a good thing he won't be doing any more experiments. You." The moment the words left my mouth, Evans shot to his feet, pointing a trembling finger at me. "What's this? You seem to care an awful lot about Peterson, officer." Detective Miller pulled him back down into his seat. "Evans, go outside and cool off. Have someone else come in." Then he turned to me. "My apologies, Professor Chen." Professor Peterson was Evans's benefactor. He's always looked up to him. I didn't care what his relationship with Peterson was. I just wanted out. "Detective Miller, when can I leave? You have no evidence connecting me to the lab explosion, do you?" "No. But we suspect you are connected to the death of Alex. Please cooperate with our investigation for the next 48 hours. We compared the note you gave us with the writing in Alex's apartment. Analysis shows they are not from the same person. However, the note and the writing under Alex's bed are a match. We also found another torn-up note in a trash can near the university that you discarded. After analysis, we've determined that everything, except for the writing in Alex's room, matches your handwriting. And," he paused, "we have a witness who says they saw you enter Alex's building the night before he died." Hearing his words, my first reaction was, impossible. I had destroyed the note from my pocket in the aftermath of the explosion. It couldn't have ended up in a trash can. And the writing under Alex's bed, I didn't do that. What the hell was going on? Before I could sort it out, Detective Miller continued, "You are now the primary suspect in the Alex case." I thought for a moment, then asked the question that had been nagging at me. "Is Alex really dead?" I could see his pupils contract for a split second. But just as quickly, he composed himself. "Why do you ask?" "No reason. Just a gut feeling." For the next several hours, Detective Miller and another officer interrogated me relentlessly. I must have answered the same questions a dozen times, but they didn't give up, constantly drilling me about my whereabouts that night. The more they did this, the more it proved one thing: they didn't have any key evidence. Insufficient evidence means no conviction. So, after 48 hours, they'd have to let me go. With that thought, I composed myself and stopped thinking about how to answer their questions. Instead, I focused on who could have switched my note. The note Alex turned in was the original "I'm still alive" slip. I never swapped it. Someone else must have switched it later. That's mystery number 1. The note from under Alex's bed and the writing on the frame weren't in Alex's handwriting. That means the person who swapped the notes wrote them while Alex was out of his dorm. That must have been the first night he was gone. But how did they know Alex wouldn't be coming back? That's mystery number 2. To be able to forge my handwriting well enough to pass police analysis would take a long time. When did this person start planning all this? And what was their motive? That's mystery number 3. I thought about it for a long time. The only person who could have done all this was Alex's roommate, Leo. "Detective Miller, I have a theory. Would you like to hear it?" I interrupted their questioning. "Go on." "The person who told you they saw me that night was Leo, wasn't it? But he has no photo or video to prove it, and since he's also a suspect, you have your doubts about his testimony." The two detectives exchanged a look. They didn't confirm or deny it, just gestured for me to continue. Leo and Alex didn't get along. I could tell that from his attitude the day I went to their dorm. Leo used my name to lure Alex out. Then, somehow, he got Alex to go back to his own rented apartment. Later that night, he went to Alex's place. After an argument, Leo knocked Alex out, locked him in the kitchen to create a sealed space, and turned on the gas. He then waited in the living room, or somewhere he could clearly see Alex. Normally, gas can cause a person to pass out in 15-20 minutes. To be safe, he waited a while longer before leaving. On his way out, he saw me dropping off the other professor and decided to pin Alex's death on me. Since he was Alex's roommate, it would have been easy for him to know what Alex wrote on his homework. He then forged 2 more notes in my handwriting and tore one up and threw it in the trash. He did all this to frame me and get away with murder. But that's all just your speculation, and it's full of holes. Why should we believe you? I nodded in acknowledgement and said nothing more. In times like these, the most important thing is to stay calm. Sometimes, it doesn't matter if what you're saying is right. What matters is that your words plant a fuse in someone's mind. You never know when the bomb will go off. In psychology, there's something called the anchoring effect. People are always influenced by the first piece of information they receive. The notes I brought up had become a mental anchor. As they investigated, they would subconsciously keep thinking about the connections between them. And because of the strange words on the notes, their focus on that anchor would be even stronger. Would a person like Alex commit suicide? No. So after talking to his friends, they wouldn't easily rule it a suicide. To prove it was a homicide, they needed evidence. What kind of evidence? A clear photo or video of a suspect, or a witness. The apartment complex was old, the camera quality was poor, and it was even worse at night. The new cameras wouldn't be installed for another month. I suspected that even their image of Leo leaving Alex's apartment was pieced together from a few blurry cameras, identified by his clothing. So, while the case seemed simple on the surface, the investigation was fraught with difficulties. 48 hours isn't that long. It's just a nap, really. When the time was up, Detective Miller came to uncuff me himself, which was a bit of a surprise. I would have thought he'd be at Alex's apartment complex collecting evidence. With so many dashcams around, one of them had to have captured a face and a timestamp, not running back here to release a nobody like me. He walked with me all the way out of the station. At the door, he asked if we could talk, just the two of us. I agreed. He offered to drive me back to the university. On the way, he laid out a brilliant motive. Professor Chen, we looked into your background. 34 years old, a widower, no children. Your wife died in an accident 5 years ago. It was a 2-for-1 tragedy. Hearing this, I gave him a wry look. Detective, pointing out people's sore spots isn't a very nice habit. Besides, what does this have to do with the current case? He ignored my comment and continued. The accident report states that a driver, due to improper operation of his vehicle, hit your wife. At the time, that road was undeveloped, with no security cameras and few people around, making it difficult to assign blame. However, a witness at the scene testified that your wife suddenly ran out into the road, so the driver wasn't held fully responsible. We investigated and found that the witness on the scene that day was Alex. I gave him a strange look. So what? What was he trying to say? That's your motive. You planned all of this to get revenge on Alex. He slammed on the brakes, his sharp gaze piercing right through me. Detective, you need evidence to back up your claims. Otherwise, I could sue you for slander. I looked around, preparing to get out of the car here. A police car like this had to have at least a few hidden microphones. And if he was talking to me alone, who knew how many other cops were listening in? Let's just stop here. Thanks for the ride, detective. I yanked on the door handle, only to find he'd already locked the doors. The theory you proposed during your interrogation had a lot of holes. Do you have time to help me clear some of them up? It wasn't a question, it was a command. I pulled my hand back from the door. The soundproofing in Alex's apartment building is terrible. We talked to his neighbors. They said that from the moment Leo entered Alex's apartment, they could hear two people arguing for a full hour. About 10 minutes after the argument stopped, Leo left the apartment. He didn't have time to commit the crime. What if he had already subdued Alex, turned on the gas, and was just making noise by himself? Alex's neighbor is a stay-at-home mom. She was playing with her child for that entire hour. She was very clear that there were two distinct voices. Furthermore, the content of the argument was constantly changing and logically consistent, which rules out the possibility of a recording. An argument that's logically consistent? Are you joking, detective? She provided us with a recording. She said she was worried something would happen to the two of them. She also said Alex's family was very kind and had helped her a lot, so she wanted to record it to give to his parents, which is to say, to you. You were the one who handled everything for Alex's apartment. You were the one who took care of him when things went wrong. His real father, Professor Peterson, just gave him money and couldn't be bothered with him. He didn't even know the apartment existed. The only person who knew he lived there and had a key was you. That's right, I do have his spare key. But that doesn't prove I was in his apartment that day. There's one more thing. There were no obvious signs of trauma to Alex's head, and no sedatives in his system. How could he not have struggled when he was in a room full of gas, on the verge of death? It's not possible. A person's will to survive is incredibly strong. He would have struggled. No. There is one possibility, that he was physically unable to struggle. He hadn't exercised in a long time. After arguing with Leo for so long, his stamina would have been low. But Leo is different. He comes from a poor family and is used to manual labor. He would have been strong enough to restrain Alex. And with you there as well, any possibility of Alex struggling would have been completely eliminated. A person in a state of suffocation is more susceptible to carbon monoxide poisoning. So it wouldn't have taken 20 minutes. He would have lost consciousness in under 10. Are you saying that Leo and I killed Alex together? He didn't say anything, but his eyes screamed his answer. Leo and I were both guilty. Leo and I had no contact before this. Your theory is absurd. In any case, you need to find some evidence first. So for now, can you please let me go? Detective Miller sat ramrod straight in his seat, never letting his guard down. He just stared at me, as if he had seen right through me. We were at a standoff. Neither of us was backing down. Finally, Detective Miller's phone rang. He was being called back to the station urgently. Only then did he unlock the door and let me out. Standing on the side of the road, I suddenly remembered what Leo had mouthed to me during the interrogation. I hadn't given it much thought since that day, but now, it came back to me in a flash of insight. He had said, "I did it all." A sense of urgency washed over me. I was afraid he was going to take the fall for everything. But right now, I had more important things to do. I couldn't believe I'd been at the station for 2 days. The time I had, which once seemed ample, was now critically short. And I never expected Leo to pull a stunt like this. I hadn't seen him back on campus these past few days, which meant he was still at the station and had confessed. I had to hurry. I rushed back to the university and opened an email I had received a month ago. Subject: regarding the investigation of Professor Peterson of university name. We have concluded a 6-month investigation into Professor Peterson's experiments. Multiple replications have found that the results in several of Professor Peterson's published papers are suspected of being fraudulent. If Professor Peterson cannot provide us with genuine experimental results within 1 month, we will retract the papers published in our journal and issue a public notice to the media. A year ago, while citing one of his papers, I discovered that his experimental results didn't match reality. It was one of the few papers he had produced from his own solo experiments in recent years. After 6 months of my own experiments, I was fairly certain the results were fabricated. I emailed the journal, questioning the integrity of his work. The 1-month deadline they gave him was extremely tight. He would have to live in the lab. And the closer he got to the end, the more dangerous the experiment would become, and the more likely an explosion would be. So, the explosion in Peterson's lab had nothing to do with me. I just neglected to remind him of the safety protocols. Yesterday, the journal sent me another email. At 9 a.m. tomorrow, they would retract all of Peterson's papers and issue a public statement. It was 8:30 now. I just had to wait until 9. After 9, the article I had spearheaded, exposing Peterson's years of stealing students' work, would also be published. I wasn't the only one he had exploited over the years. There were other professors, and even students. Starting today, the mountain that had been crushing all of us was finally going to be moved. I locked my office door and sat there quietly, waiting for the minutes to tick by. At 9 a.m. sharp, the journal's website published the notice, retracting all of Peterson's papers published with them and citing academic misconduct and fabrication of data. At 9:05 a.m., multiple scholars released a joint accusation, alleging plagiarism and theft in several of Peterson's papers. At 10:30 a.m., I walked into the police station and turned myself in. 17 Case Retrospective. 5 years ago, my wife died in a car accident. At the time, she called me after she was hit. The call was at 9:37. But for the next half an hour, the driver didn't take her to the hospital. You said there was only one witness at the scene. That's not true. There were 2. The other one was Leo. Leo was a student my wife had been sponsoring for years. He was scared at the time and didn't testify. The driver was sentenced to 7 years. But here's what really happened that day. Alex saw a car speeding toward them from a distance and intentionally ran into the road. My wife rushed out to save him. Just as they were both about to get clear, Alex shoved her, causing the accident. I only discovered this truth by chance a year ago. So, I threatened Leo to help me cover my tracks, and I had him set up the scene in the dorm room and report on Alex's movements. After Leo got into the argument with Alex, he reported back to me and stalled for time until I could get there. After dropping the other professor home, I climbed over the fence near the abandoned carports at the edge of the complex, avoiding all the cameras, and got into Alex's building. Once I was there, I told Leo to leave. He thought I was just going to teach Alex a lesson behind everyone's back, so he left without suspicion. That left me alone to subdue Alex and turn on the gas. I was in the kitchen with him. But I had brought a portable oxygen tank, enough to last me those few minutes. I just watched him as he slowly lost consciousness, until he finally stopped struggling. Detective Miller, that is my complete confession. His face showed a hint of disbelief. Would Professor Chen really do something like that? Hearing that, I wanted to laugh. Just a few hours ago, he was suspecting me, and now that I've confessed, he thinks I'm lying. Then how did you know there was a second person at the scene? I left a voice recorder at my wife's grave. I don't know if you've ever heard the rumor that sometimes the deceased will appear at their own graves. I was afraid she might speak and I wouldn't hear her, so I left a recorder. Why would you believe in that kind of superstition? I don't, really. But it gave me some comfort. And it also led me to accidentally discover the truth about what happened 5 years ago. The memory card from that recorder is near my office door handle. You can go look for it. As soon as I finished, someone left the interrogation room. Most of the faces in the room showed relief. Only Detective Miller's brow was furrowed. What about all the notes? Just a smokescreen. All the handwriting was mine. I'm a very good mimic. It was all meant to muddy the waters. I just told a lie. I have one last question. I'd like you to explain your actions after Leo left. You mean the fact that the kitchen window was opened? I suppose my conscience got the better of me at the last minute. I couldn't go through with it. I opened the window. And I gave him what was left of my oxygen. I paused, then continued, Alex is still alive, isn't he? He's no longer in critical condition. That's good. Cuff me. Professor Chen, are you sure you want to plead guilty? Detective Miller asked me one last time, his voice grave. I plead guilty. Saying it all out loud, it was a relief. Leo wouldn't be dragged into this anymore. Everything was finally coming to an end. Professor Chen was formally arrested at 11 a.m. Leo was released without charge. 3 years later, Leo came to visit me in prison. Professor, I saw Alex a few days ago. He's in a wheelchair. His face is pale, and he seems a little slow. Before, I didn't just hate him. I resented you, too. But seeing him like that, it was like waking up. I went to visit her grave last year. I saw what you left for me. Professor, thank you for helping me. I didn't say a word the whole time. He just rambled on. You know, that day, I told a lie, too. I said I was a good teacher. Now, I guess you could say I am.